The Short Game is listener-supported on Patreon. If you'd like to support the show and join us on our Discord, head to theshortgame.net or patreon.com/theshortgame. Welcome back to The Short Game. This is a show about short video games, games that respect your time. I am Raygan Kelly, and I am joined this week by two awesome co-hosts.
Laura Nash.
And Shane Kelly.
And this week we are talking about What the Golf? So What the Golf is a video game for the Apple Arcade subscription platform of devices, as well as Nintendo Switch and PC. And it's been requested a number of times since it came out way last year. People have been asking us to cover this game, and it's not that we haven't been playing it. I've had it on my phone the entire time. I've dipped into it here and there. But it just seemed like now was a good time to cover it. We've got a little bit of a lull in our schedule, and it's now out on Nintendo Switch, which I think is a great place to play it. Came out there in, I think, March or April, something like that, earlier in 2020.
Yeah, What the Golf is a weird game. And, well, you know, I think you should play it. I think everyone should really, because it will make you laugh. And that's our review. Let's wrap it up, guys.
Yeah, done. I mean, it's kind of between a game and like a surprise engine, because the whole point of the game is it's What the Golf? Sounds like you're going to play golf, right? What if it started off playing golf and then you were instead flinging your own body? And then what if you were flinging a club and then a car and then the thing moving? Every single time you play, something else happens. So it's almost impossible to describe the, quote, mechanics of this game, because the entire point is every level changes.
Yeah, I think there's a good chance that people have already been exposed to this game in some degree by this point. You know, this game has been gifted and shared on Twitter and so on quite a bit since it came out last year. But the core thing about this game is that, you know, it's taking the standard mechanic for a swing in a golf game. So I love golf games. I really, really like golf games of really all sorts, but especially ones that take a little bit more of a either absurdist or over-the-top swing at golf, things like the Mario Golf series and things of that nature.
Shout out to Golf Story, which
yes.
We have an episode on.
God, I loved Golf Story. Despite some issues with... So this is where I run into a lot of problems, because I get also... Because I've played a lot of golf games, I get very particular about them. We'll get back to that later. But this takes the central mechanic of most golf games, which is a swing mechanic. So some golf games do this in different ways, but for the most part, what we're talking about here is a kind of a slingshot style mechanic. You're pulling back either on your touchscreen or on a Nintendo Switch Joy-Con stick to kind of set power, and then releasing, and it does a little swing, and you're, in the case of golf, sending a ball flying with your club, right? This game takes that central interaction mechanic, pull back and release, and, you know, point in a direction, pull back and release, and finds every single possible thing you can do with that interaction in a video game. Just iterating and iterating and iterating, and trying to find ways to make that funny and interesting and surprising, make different things happen when you do that pull back and release.
And here's the capper. Every time you get to the end of a level, if you hit the flag or whatever you're supposed to hit at that level, you will then get a pun.
That's what kept me playing Animal Crossing, was most of the fish-based puns. And here, if you like golf-based puns, you're gonna be just rolling right along. This is a game that is made as a golf game, but it's definitely, I think it's made by people who are not golfers.
They say that on one of the machines.
Yeah. And that they are not really particularly interested in making a golf game. They're just interested in making like a fun, flicky mobile game is what this really kind of feels like. Although it plays on lots of consoles, and I hear the port for the Nintendo Switch is particularly excellent. But this is a game where, as a player, you're basically playing it to get in on a bunch of sequence of different jokes. And there's challenges to it, but it's really about that moment of surprise, because every level is a little bit of a setup and then a payoff. And the setup is you start the level and it kind of looks like golf, and then you do the swing, and then almost every time something unexpected happens. And it's like the most basic is like, well, I'm going to pull back to swing and my golfer is pulling the club back. And when I let go, it's not the ball. He swings the club and then it sends the golfer flying. Right. So that's the kind of joke to it. But it actually does play out a lot like you might imagine a mobile golf game where you have little challenge putts. And it feels like a lot of it's like putt, right? Where, you're not playing like 18 holes. You're trying to sink your ball or your house or your soccer ball or your cat or, whatever it is that you're flinging into the, hit the flag or hit the hole at the end. And they do progressively make, introduce more and more interesting challenges, things that are going to kind of disrupt, even once you've gotten the joke, kind of disrupt your abilities to land a shot. One that I remember was really funny was, it was a soccer ball, and instead of a golf ball, it's almost hard to describe this game because it's so abstract, it's so weird. You're shooting the soccer ball, and then all of a sudden kids run in and start trying to kick the ball off the course. And now it's a game about like moving quick and timing.
It's instead of a game
about
yeah.
And they warp this in so many weird different ways where they take this gameplay element and turn it into different gameplay. Like there are puzzle game levels. There are levels where it's not about accuracy at all. It's about moving like a mass quantity of like hundreds of balls.
There's grappling hook levels.
And all of these things, I really like it when games do this, where they pick up a mechanic and just use it for a few minutes before discarding it. We've talked about games like this on the show before.
Yeah. So I like to think of this as sort of like generous game design, right? Like this is game design that is like constantly providing you something new. And it never stops to dwell on any one thing to the point where it ever becomes tired or even familiar. It's always moving on to the next thing immediately. Each hole. So the game has this structure where you're kind of navigating through a map that is sort of your level select. And the map has a bunch of golf holes, and you put your little ball into the golf holes to select a level. But each of those holes actually represents 3 levels or stages. Each one of them has sort of a basic version. So a version of each hole that is sort of like, here's where we just want you to experience the surprise of our new idea. It's not really a challenge. It's just setup, punchline. And something I was thinking about a lot as I was playing through this is that how perfect a golf game is for this, because there's something about the sort of pullback and release of the golf mechanic that has a sort of a tactile feeling of setup, punchline, pullback, release. So, the first time through each of these is just sort of like an instant gratification of like, here's the joke, and that's it. Second time through, they usually take that same level, but they find a way to make it a little bit more challenging. But it's not always in the way that you would expect. So sometimes it's something as simple as like, here's that same thing that you just did, but now instead of having unlimited putts or whatever, now it's a par 4, right? But sometimes it actually upends the thing and it becomes a different thing in order to make it more challenging. And then finally, there's sort of a third version of the level, the crown version, that is sort of the hardest possible version of this thing. And what's very interesting about that is that it's often very different from the initial setup. It's not just about playing the same hole 3 times through it at varying difficulties in order to get your little crown. Very often that final version is actually like, okay, yes, you've just seen our hand here with this example, with this hole. We've just told you this joke. I'm going to use a very, I think, relatively early game example, and I might be getting the details here wrong. But let's say, okay, we're putting through an area that has exploding barrels, you know, and you hit the barrels, and it causes your ball to fly off in a weird direction. So first time through, you are putting through these barrels. You want to avoid hitting them and, you know, get to the hole. Second time through, slightly harder. Same hole, but now you are the barrel and you're trying to roll through without being exploded yourself. And then third time through, you might think, well, okay, how do they make this even harder? Well, the third time through, they've actually turned the barrel into a rocket. And as soon as you pull back without even releasing, suddenly your barrel is careening around the level at extraordinary speed. And if you touch anything, you explode. So you have to navigate through the level extremely fast in a non-golf-like way. It feels like sort of controlling a rocket ship at top speed in order to get to the hole.
Or if you're me and you've just been watching a bunch of speed runs, you immediately fly out of bounds and just fly to the car because you're tired of trying to navigate.
Yeah, and it's really neat because it's like, yes, it feels like a build. It's got an idea. It does a twist on that idea. And then it does a sort of a prestige, right? Like a final twist on that idea that's extra hard, but also has something else new to it, right? But it's not just building in difficulty. It's every single time it's revealing some new clever idea that it has for you. And it's incredibly admirable how much of that they managed to do here. Not every single one of these levels was like a laugh out loud, really great idea as far as I was concerned, but literally every one of them is different from every other one of them, which is astonishing.
Yeah. I mean, you called it generous. I think this is the kind of thing that I tried to pitch stuff like this early when I was doing game design, and they were like, that's extremely expensive. No. It's like that absurdly generous where every mechanic is almost immediately, like it's used for 5 holes and then maybe discarded. And I think, you know, people have compared this to like WarioWare. I feel like it's very like, it's morphing. It's like every mechanic you can think of. And this does get to go under our list of meta games as well, because if you're in a video game that is dealing with many mechanics, it's going to inevitably start doing video game parodies.
Yeah. One thing I want to say about that, before we get into the parody aspect, is like that. It's not just that, but it's the overall concept in this game is, what if every kind of game was just a golf game with a different coat of paint on it? Sports, if every single game on your iPhone. Yeah. Platformers, puzzle games, every kind of sport, bowling.
Lemons.
Yeah. How would you control Mario with golf mechanics?
Yeah.
The Olympics.
Yeah.
The whole section about the Olympics that released 2 months ago as an extra pack on Apple Arcade that just made my heart hurt as a sports fan. Like Olympics diehard. I was like, oh, the Olympics pack is out.
Uh-huh. Yeah, they've been working on that. Yeah. In fact, I think from the very original pitch for the game, which this game was launched as a crowdfunding project on... Have you guys ever heard of Fig.co?
Yeah, I'm sort of familiar with Fig. It's it was, I believe it's started by the people over at Double Fine in response to the way that Kickstarters tend to work, right? And their idea with it, and I might not have all the details here 100% correct, but basically the idea was that what if Kickstarter, but instead by buying in on a crowdfunding campaign, you were actually buying some amount of equity as an investor in the project. So I don't know a whole lot about how well it's been doing as a service, but it's definitely like a slightly different take on crowdfunding that leans a little more towards larger funding amounts per, person, but works a little bit more as an investing platform in indies that anyone can participate in, rather than being something like Kickstarter, where practically speaking these days is essentially functioning as a extremely advanced pre-order.
Yeah, maybe I'm missing something there, because I did want to... That's all I really knew about Fig, is that it's supposedly like you can invest and get money back if the weird retro clone that you are so dedicated to actually makes a few dollars. And I have to assume this game has made some money because now it's on Apple Arcade, it's on Nintendo Switch. Maybe that's a it's on Steam. Maybe that's a wrong-headed assumption of me. I know it takes a lot of money to make a lot of sales to make money as a game, but
I'm sure that Apple paid serious money for What the Golf.
Apple, there's a lot of discussion going on. This is a bit of a sidetrack, but there's a lot of discussion and rumors going on around right now about Apple bundling its services. And I think Apple Arcade is the prime thing that they could bundle with music. Like, because Apple Arcade, it doesn't cost them any more. Like, they have to add a user to it, right? Music, it does cost them more money because they have to pay licensing fees. Yeah. But they have a lot, I would imagine, a lot of control over the licensing on Apple Arcade. And then
Apple TV,
and then there's like Apple News and Apple TV, easy to consider adding that into a bundle. I would probably not expect them to add Apple News because that's another thing where they have to pay a lot of licensing fees to all the content providers. And also, like, it would be kind of a weird fit. Here's like 4 fun things and 1 unfun thing.
I don't know. We'll see. I think, this is not an Apple tech speculation podcast. So yet, right? We'll start one eventually. But I do think, like, they've got to start bundling stuff, right? Like, I pay them 4 different subscriptions right now for various things. Anyway,
coming back to this game, by the way, I had unsubscribed from Apple Arcade and I resubscribed just to try to finish What the Golf. And I'll probably be unsubscribing again unless something catches my eye. I'll run the rest of the month out reacquainting myself with Grindstone, which is, to me, the whole reason to give Apple $5.
Yeah, if you're by the way not subscribed to Apple Arcade and not interested in subscribing to Apple Arcade, the 2 things that keep me subscribed to Apple Arcade, What the Golf, and which I haven't 100% finished yet, and I do plan to finish, and Grindstone are now both on. What the Golf is on Nintendo Switch now, and they announced Grindstone for Nintendo Switch recently. So I'm pretty sure their arrangement with Apple won't permit them to release on any other mobile platforms, but apparently Nintendo Switch doesn't count as a mobile platform. So you can expect
they just
Grindstone.
can't go on Android.
Yeah. Which, I mean, fair. Apple paid probably a bunch of money for that, and that's how this stuff works out. But Grindstone, real good game, guys. And if you don't have an Apple device or don't want to subscribe, it's definitely worth however much they decide to charge for it on Nintendo Switch.
Yeah. So going back, we were talking about Fig. I found a quote early, summarizes this game beautifully. Triband, the developers, said in that original post, "Over the slow descent to madness, Triband has started seeing golf everywhere. All games are golf games to them. When you see a platformer or a goat simulator, they just see yet another potential golf game, and they are all going to be part of this game. Golf is always the same. Perfectly round balls, 18 holes, blue sky, neatly cut grass, fancy people in nice clothes. What's not to hate? In the 60s, NASA went to the moon to see if they could make golf fun. Guess what? They couldn't. So now we are giving it a go."
Okay. I feel like that's a good point. A good moment for me to step in defense of golf and golf games. Now, I should also, first of all, say that I am very much in defense of, I love golf video games. I don't love golf as a sport, and I especially have mixed feelings to negative feelings about golf as a use of space in the physical world. I mean, golf courses are problematic in and of themselves, which is why partly I think golf games are actually great because, hey, you don't have to carve out large chunks of land that could otherwise be put to nice public uses and fence them off only to be used by the wealthy in tiny carts wearing weird shorts. But golf as a sport has adapted to video games better than almost any other sport in history. Because it's played solo, you don't have to try to figure out how to have a single player control an entire team worth of people. And it has simple enough mechanics that you can play it in almost and complex enough that there's different varieties to, like, different ways to approach it. Golf games golf games are great. And when What the Golf presents their game as the golf game for people who hate golf, like, I kind of get where they're coming from, but also that's not me. I love golf. I think golf is great. I've played a lot of golf video games over the years. And I sometimes wonder, I think I had this complaint when we were playing, Golf Story as well, is that, like, because I've played a ton of golf video games, sometimes these games that take the approach of, like, I sometimes feel like this is a little bit like the approach. It's like, so imagine you're like a big fan of dating sim visual novels, and then the American market seems to only celebrate dating sim visual novels that are weird twists on the genre, like Hatoful Boyfriend, where you're dating birds or what have you. Those are the ones that everyone talks about. They talk about the KFC put out a dating sim where you date the Colonel, right? But nobody talks about just like straight dating sims. And I'm not that guy, but I am that guy for golf games. I get a little frustrated.
You're a golf game stan.
I'm a golf game stan. And like, I don't buy and play every single golf game, right? But like, golf games are a happy place for me. When I am...
Listener, you might be thinking to yourself, Raygan loves golf so much. Surely he owns some golf clubs and has played real golf. You'd be wrong.
Yeah, very wrong. No, I'm a virtual golf guy. But like I love golf games, and when I need some happy place, where I don't need to learn new systems, I don't need to deeply involve myself in a story. I want to boot up a game and have a certain part of my brain tickled for 30 minutes. I'll boot up. Don't laugh. Okay, yes, you can laugh. Bad phrasing, but you get the idea. There's something really tactile and like simple and pure about golf games. What they said in your quote, Laura: blue skies, green grass, and either the like 3-click meter or like a Tiger Woods style like pullback mechanic. All of those are just like natural, intuitive interfaces. For me, like I go back constantly to, what's the Neo Geo golf game? I'm forgetting the name of it all of a sudden.
You're asking the wrong people, Raygan.
Yeah, big tournament golf, or there's another name for it. I'm forgetting it. Anyway, the wonderful Neo Geo golf game that I'm forgetting the name of, or like any Mario golf game, or even like NES golf. Like all of them, they've got something going for them that just like really works. And so, but that also means that having played a ton of golf games, I get a bit particular about them. Like I've got my ideas about like what makes a good golf game and like how to execute on it well. And
oh boy, do you.
I'm afraid I do. And that's why, like, I think if you go back to our episode about Golf Story, like I was in love with the concept and very, very much liked the execution, particularly things like the ability to like drop a ball anywhere and putt and have like the golf mechanics like be part of the world, even when you're not necessarily quote unquote golfing. Many, many things to love about that game, but I had a lot of little quibbles about the specific golf mechanics. In fact, I think I had a bit of a rant. I had a lot of the same kind of feelings here. It's not that these are bad golf mechanics. It's that they're actually not, they don't feel like golf mechanics to me. This is more Angry Birds than golf, in my opinion. It's a little hard to like specifically explain what I mean here, but like, golf games are about precision and finesse.
This game doesn't even count your strokes for most levels.
Right. And it's often, golf games are often about like repeating the same hole or course many times to try to best yourself, right? To try to improve your scores. And I'm usually not even playing against other people or even simulated people. I'm just trying to sort of see my best score and see if it improved from last time. And this is not interested in that at all. So like something about this game, like the humor mostly worked for me, at least for a good long while. Eventually it did start to sort of wear a little thin. But as a golf game, this is an utter failure. As a funny interaction, as an exhibition of funny interactions, this is very, very successful.
I would just like to talk a little bit about, there's like, imagine you have just gone to a resort, right? And there's a pathway and it says this way to golf. And as you travel down that pathway, there's a path that goes left and a path that goes right. And the path that goes left has a beautiful green 18-hole course, and the path that goes right says putt-putt. If you are going right, this game is for you. If you are going left, you are Raygan.
Yes, and you are going to be in for a time. I mean, this is a game that goes, can golf be super hot? Yes. And if you're going for precision, you are going to be very mad.
What this made me wish, though, like every single time this game had a good idea, and there's a lot of really good ideas here, a lot of very, very, very good ideas here,
and a whole lot of really derivative ideas that are fun for about 10 seconds, which is exactly how long they play.
Yeah, which is great. That's honestly absolutely true. But like when this game had a really, really good and clever idea, I was like, I hope this gets stolen for the next Mario Golf game or something like that, where it can actually be done in a game that more approximates golf. I know I'm probably the only person who had that kind of haunting the back of their mind as like,
maybe,
oh, this was good. Could have been better on like every single freaking hole in this experience. But maybe I'm that weirdo.
Raygan has played too many games and they've sucked all the joy out of him. And now he can only respond to perfect simulationist golf.
Well, I will say, though, like, this is a game that is to be sampled and not gorged upon. It's not dinner. Mm-hmm. It is a snack. And I think if you, once you get through the little tutorial area, you end up going into the golf lab and you explore different sections. Mm-hmm. And each section has its own, like, theme of mechanic. Like, maybe you're in the soccer section or maybe you're in the space section. And I think, like, if you go through too many sections in a row, you are going to start crossing your arms and being like, delight me, game. Put down the phone, put down the Switch, and come back when you are ready to be delighted.
Laura, you just completely figured me out. That was exactly my emotion. I was like, earlier this game was delightful, and now it's not as delightful. Get with it.
So put down the device.
I've played 30 holes in a row, and only approximately 18 of those 30 holes have made me smile.
At the beginning of this game, I was lolling, and now I'm just laughing. No, put down the phone, put down the Switch, come back later when you need some weird silliness in your life.
Laura has an absolutely perfect point here. Laura, I think if I had heard from you about this more in the middle of this game, then I think I would have enjoyed it more. And I did really enjoy it. Don't get me wrong. I know I've just spent a moment griping about this game not being what it claims very much to not be.
Well, I'm also going to say, I think most people reviewing this game played the first 30 minutes tops, based on what I've seen. Based on the reviews I've read.
Well, I think maybe people were being good about spoilers here, and we're trying to do the same because this game is very much about surprising you. And so I agree that like all the coverage I've seen shows video, screenshots, etc. from like the first 30 minutes, and the game continues to have good ideas after that point.
Yeah, I'm just saying, like, I think it is very easy to know what this game is going to give you, and although it will keep surprising you, it is going to deliver on the same thing you're getting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So it will continue transforming and morphing and bringing you new ideas, but it's not suddenly going to a dark room you into a deep conversation.
Maybe one of these holes like opens up into like Civ 4.
And then you're just playing Civ 4. Yeah. It's not even frog fractions. Like, you're still going to play the same golf mechanic.
I have a couple other things we should probably touch on just because, like, in some way we are talking about this game on its merits. I can't say I'm particularly fond of the aesthetics. They're not bad, and maybe this is just me and 2020 brain, but I feel like this has sort of become indie game the aesthetic, right? Like this look.
Yeah.
And I'm starting to like. I like this aesthetic, but I'm also getting a little tired of it. And that's not this game's fault in particular, but like, I've played, Donut County, and I've played like I played like feels like a dozen games that look a really lot like this sort of like flat shaded 3D model, like not exactly low poly, but like low detail, rounded.
Yeah, flat colors, no shade, like no textures. Yeah, and this look has a great pedigree. I think for me, I'm pretty sure this all traces back to your Katamari Damacy's and the things of that lineage visually. I do think I don't know if that's just the fact that it's an indie game. I think it's more or less the fact that this is a game that wants to make 1 million of something, and in order to do that, it has to be very economical with its like graphical resources, its art resources. And I would never hold that against a game. And I think also, it stylistically meets the needs of the game. It's clear and easy to understand when you look at the every new hole, you can read it instantly. So I don't have anything at all against the style of the game.
You're absolutely right. This game gets a pass. Other indie games, you're on notice.
Sure. Yeah. And I don't think in this game, the art is not the joke.
Right.
Whereas in other indie games, the art sometimes is part of the joke. The character design, this is polished necessity.
Mm-hmm.
It's better than that. I'm being a little mean to it, but like that, the assets aren't funny in themselves. Like the cat asset is a cat. It's not like a funny looking cat.
The golfer's pretty funny.
The golfer is pretty funny.
He has a very odd nose.
He looks like Bert.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was getting Gumby vibes off that guy.
And the animation and stuff is all fairly minimal. I think this is a really economical game in terms of its use of art and assets and animation and things like that.
The music is a weird a cappella thing for the most part that like I was fine with.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's often part of the joke. Like the sound effects are much like a lot of the game payoff. For example, this is early, but we've mentioned video game thing. There is a level Super Mario, and they hum the Super Mario theme, and I think they might even be saying "What the Golf" while they're like humming the golf words to the Super Mario theme.
Oh, one more thing I want to say. My son, 3 years old, loves to watch this game. He thinks it is hilarious. Yeah, it is. Every time something dumb happens, he thinks it's very, very funny.
That's happening all the time.
Yeah. I mean, it moves fast. He will watch me play this for about as long as he'll watch me play almost anything. So, maybe that factors into your decision on a game like this.
That didn't even occur to me. Like, I bet I bet my kid would like watching this game too. Now that you mentioned it. So that's another reason for me to dive back into this thing. I've gotten through a pretty significant chunk of the game, but having looked, I thought it was like 80, 90% of the way through the game when we sat down to record. And then Laura told me, there's a percentage meter that you can go. It's kind of hard to get to because the game kind of saves your spot and picks you up where you left off. And I hadn't been back to the title screen in ages. And I went back to the title screen, and it turns out I'm not nearly as far through the game as I thought. I was thinking this game was about 3 hours long. And I think it's a lot more than that, although maybe that's just me not being good at it. But I hadn't gotten through nearly as much of the game as I thought I had.
Yeah, the early things said 4 hours, and they added 30 more levels and additional modes. And so that's quite a lot more. So I'd say it's probably like 5 to 6. And if you actually want to do all of the challenges, all 3 versions of every hole, you're going to be playing a while.
Yeah. I do think even if you were going for a fairly completionist approach, you probably are still coming in under our traditional 10-hour cap. But I think most people will be probably significantly under that. But like, still, I really thought I was like 90% of the way through the game, and I was not. I was not close to that. So I've still got more of this to go back and explore, and I'm looking forward to doing that. So I really enjoyed going back to this. Like I mentioned earlier, like I played this right when it first came out on Apple Arcade. I downloaded it on my phone, played a pretty significant chunk of it, and then just kind of stopped. And I'm glad to have had a reason to go back and play more. And I think I will probably play a bit more of it even now. So glad we decided to talk about it on the show. Just to recap, it is out on Apple Arcade if you have a subscription. And that means that it's playable on Macs, any Apple iOS device like iPhones and iPads, as well as on your Apple TV if you are playing games on that, if you're that guy. It's also on Nintendo Switch, and it's on PC on Steam. I'm pretty sure that's just Windows. If you want to play this on a Mac, you probably need to do the Apple Arcade subscription. You can't get it from Steam. Oh, I'm sorry. It's actually not on Steam. It's on the Epic Game Store, not on Steam. So go look for it there.
So this game, it's fun, it's tiny, and it's surprisingly large. And I think we're done talking about it. But you know what I really was looking forward to this week is we haven't done one of these in a while. Listeners know that we have a segment on the show that what we like to do is we go around in a circle and we talk about things that are making us happy, usually things that are making us happy during the course of the last week. And the name of the segment is What's Making Us Happy This Week? So, Raygan, during the course of this week.
And only this week.
Yes.
No cheating.
Would you let me know of something that has been making us happy so that we can start the Making Us Happy This Week segment?
Thank you, Shane. So 2020 being as it is, it's been more and more difficult for me to find these things, don't you know? And so the thing that's been making
Raygan.
me the most happy, I'm sorry, I don't mean to be the downer guy.
Raygan,
no
downers.
The thing that's been making me the most happy this week is something that I recommend to everyone, and that is my kid who had been going through a phase.
Your kid's making me happy too.
My kid
She's adorable.
My kid had been going through a phase where she was resisting bedtime incredibly strongly, just the most strongly.
Listeners, this is karma. Raygan has spent a long time bragging to me about how easy his daughter is to put to bed.
Yes, well, she had been very, very easy to put to bed. She'd been just the best. And then she went through a phase here where she was just not having it, and every bedtime was tears and anger.
Welcome to my world.
I don't know what happened this week, but I changed my approach where I'm just gonna do a lot of reading books before bed. We'd been reading books to her before bed before, but amped it up by 4 times. So now we're reading 8-10 books before I'm putting her to bed. We're talking about little board books, so they're short. Doesn't take that long. And that has solved the problem. And I can recommend a specific book. And this is for parents out there. I'm not blowing anybody's minds because it's very popular. But the Pout Fish, which is a very popular children's book, is one that I will recommend to all of the parents who have children in this age range. My daughter is about 20 months, but I think this probably will work for other ages too. The Pout Fish is very cute. And I like the Pout Fish because the Pout Fish is helping me get to my daughter to bed. So thank you, Pout Fish. You're making me happy this week. Shane, what's making you happy this week?
So I have a podcast recommendation. And first, I just want to tell you how I found this podcast because it's very funny to me. I was browsing the internet and I was looking at some shit-posted memes. And I saw a pair of it was off of a online store, and I saw this pair of red booty shorts that had written across the butt the words, "Ceaseless watcher, turn your gaze upon this wretched thing."
Oh my gosh, I have seen there's a whole group of internet ladies who have found the custom Etsy shorts, and if you look at the things you will put on their asses, it's all abandon hope ye who enter here.
Oh, yes.
They're all weird internet memes. It's great.
Yeah, so that had me just rolling. I was laughing so much thinking about the ceaseless watcher turning its gaze upon this wretched ass. And so I Googled it. I was like, what is that from? It sounds like it's from something. So it turns out that is a quote from the Magnus Archives, which is a horror fiction podcast written by a man named Jonathan Sims. And there's a kind of a recording company called The Rusty Quill. And it turns out it's a really good time to get into this podcast because first off, it's gotten really huge. It gets over 4 million downloads a month, this podcast. And
almost
second,
as popular as the short game.
Almost. And it's also in its final season. And it's one of these things that I just sort of dove into it. I was like, oh, what is this? Oh, it's a horror anthology podcast. And the episodes are only 20 minutes long. That sounds perfect. So I just started listening. And in the first season, I'll try. I won't spoil anything here, but in the first season, it's very true to the sort of typical horror anthology, right? There's a bit of a frame around the horror short stories, in that it is there's a main character who, like the author, is also named Jonathan Sims, is the new head archivist of the Magnus Institute archives. And it's this sort of dry Brit who has this sort of disdainful voice, who is sort of skeptically reading through various statements that this archive seems to exist for people who have had some sort of experience with the supernatural or believe that they have, to come and give a statement saying what it is that happened to them. And eventually you start to see a little bit more of the frame story, but that basic grounding there of the horror anthology is really good, because these shorts are like little bite-sized horror stories that almost all of them land pretty darn well. There were some of them that were really sticking with me, and if they don't land for you, they're only like 20, 25 minutes, like I think maybe 30 minutes tops. So I've been riding my bike a lot and stuff, and it's a fun thing. What I was finding was that biking around at night in the kind of sweltering, steamy Houston evening weather that we're having, there were some moments where I was like having a little chill up my spine from some of these stories. In the first season, like the very first episode is called Anglerfish, and I thought that was a great first episode. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And there's also in the first season, I thought, a really interesting and very different take on vampires, which it's often hard to do a new or interesting take on vampires. And there's a lot of other like just pure weird things. This is, I think, a person who the writer Jonathan Sims, not the character Jonathan Sims, I think understands what makes a good horror story. Because there's a lot of horror fiction that doesn't put a lot of thought into how to tell a really good story, right? And
they focus on the horror, but not the storytelling.
Well, they think like you can just have a taboo be broken and be like, oh, that's horror,
right?
And this isn't that. It's like genuine. Basically, every phobia you can think of is the focus. It's basically episode by episode. It's like, what if this, but creepy. But it's pretty well made. And also, as they expand, especially as you get late into the first season and into the second season and thereafter, the very thin frame story broadens out quite a bit into a really nicely done radio drama with a large cast of characters representing other members of the Magnus Archives, the Magnus Institute, and the stories that in the first season seem to be just a creepy tale. Like, what if you were walking home at night and something creepy said hello to you from a darkened alleyway? Well, all of those sorts of things are part of a broader story, and it is really all tied together, but it never stops having that kind of bite-sized element to it. It never turns into like, tune in next week to hear the conclusion. It's always, well, the statement of the week is about an Arctic expedition gone horribly wrong. And then right at the end, we might advance the sort of background plotline just a little bit just before Jonathan Sims turns off the tape recorder. And so I really have been enjoying it a lot. I'm almost through with it. It is now into season 5. Season 5 debuted April 1st, 2020. And it is coming to a close, I believe. I know that they are only going to have 5 seasons. I am still somewhere in season 3. So I still have a fair amount to get through. Actually, no, I think I've just started season 4. And there's it's a good podcast, guys. I'm going to stop talking about it now.
Thanks. You've sold me. I need to spend some time and listen to that. It sounds really fun, and I think I could use that right now. Laura, what's making you happy this week?
So I am not going to recommend anything half as wholesome as Raygan and not quite as horror-focused as Shane's. I'm going to recommend people check out the Harley Quinn animated TV show because it has been making me very happy for weeks. I just finished the last episode of season 2 last night, and I was worried at the beginning before watching the show because I had seen a couple people be like, ooh, is it just like rated R for language because it can, I was kind of afraid it might be that I didn't want dark DC getting into Harley Quinn, who I think is just fun. Let me tell you, this TV show knows exactly what it is. The first 5 minutes opens up and it's you there's this beautiful yacht and a man is giving a speech and he says, "Gentlemen, my fellow whites, we're here to celebrate our favorite pastime, fucking over the poor." I was like, oh,
all right.
This show knows what it's doing. It knows who it is. And it does start off, the first season is the Harley Quinn realizes the Joker is not a good guy and breaks up with him and then is like, well, I can be my own supervillain, right? I can get a crew and I can join the Legion of Doom and I can impress my ex and all this other stuff. But what makes it really special are 3 things. One is Poison Ivy is her best friend, and Poison Ivy and her have a great relationship. Poison Ivy classifies herself as an eco-terrorist. Thank you very much. She's not a supervillain. And she is very level-headed. She's like, well, you gave me therapy and fixed me, and you're still super messed up, Harley. But the other thing is...
That sounds so good.
Because DC doesn't subscribe to the Marvel, everything must be part of a unified canon. Mm-hmm. They can make Bane absolutely ridiculous. They can have the Justice League get trapped. They can destroy Gotham. They can kill the Penguin. They can do whatever they want. You honestly, no one is safe. They're just as likely. Running joke is that the Legion of Doom loves making jokes on Bane's behalf. They give him a folding chair at a table where everyone has normal chairs and tell him they ran out, and then they find a room and they open the door and there's 20 chairs behind there, and Bane's just like, I thought I had my own seat. I know, and you're just like, Bane believes in rehabilitation in the pit. Bless Bane. And also the voice acting is superb. There's tons of off-color jokes. People will make references to sex. It's very hyper-violent. But what really makes it is every single person is on point for the voice acting, and the joke density is very high. I feel a lot of other shows focus a ton on plot and worrying about the universe and have we done enough tie-ins to the area. And this is where they make fun of Aquaman by distract him by putting him in front of an aquarium so they can commit a crime because they'll be too busy talking to fish. Great throwaway, but a perfect throwaway. I have never had a new character pop up that I haven't been super excited. Oh, also in season 2, the Riddler gets super buff, and that is an excellent side story.
This sounds really, really fun. Where's it streaming again? Or I thought it was streaming, right?
It is. It's on. You can stream it on HBO Max.
Oh, nice. Okay.
So it's all part of the DC universe there. It'll probably show up elsewhere as well, but it's very funny, and Jim Rash is a voice actor on it.
Okay.
Belle is Poison Ivy. Kelly Kuko is Harley Quinn from Big Bang Theory, and she's one of the producers. Alan Tudyk voices a Clayman, who is an actor who can morph into different people.
Wow. That's Clayface, right?
Yeah. But a very silly version.
So this is, I'm pretty sure, like, at least art-wise, it's based on the original Batman animated series, right? Like, it's sort of a vibe on that.
It's got that, like, very chiseled, fun with form style. Yeah.
That's awesome.
It's like an updated Technicolor version of that. 100%.
That sounds super, super fun. I need to get on that. That sounds really cool. Well, that's awesome. And that'll do it for us this week. So listeners, thank you so much for joining us on this episode of The Short Game. You can find us on the internet at www.theshortgame.net, where you'll find a contact form where you can let us know what you think about the show or what games you think would be good for us to cover on the show. This part of the year is actually a great time to suggest things that we might have missed earlier in this year or even last, like something like What the Golf, something that we just never got around to covering because our schedule is starting to get a little light. So we would love those sorts of suggestions. Now's a great time to send them in. And you can also find our show on...
Listeners, I don't want you to get the wrong idea when we say our schedule is a little bit light. Our lives are very complicated.
Nate is getting ready to have a baby. I have a new baby. We're all very busy. So we need those short game recommendations, y'all. Also, IF Comp is coming up. So our lives are going to be full of those pretty soon here. But until IF Comp...
So yes, recommendations. But
you're like, but don't bring us shit, is what you're trying to say.
Yeah, bring your A game.
Don't fuck with us.
Bring your A game with these recommendations. They better be good, y'all. Bring us those good recommendations. And you can find us on Twitter at _shortgame. You can find me personally on Twitter at RayganK. That's RayGanK. Shane, where can people find you?
You can find me on Twitter at 8BitShane.
And Laura, where can people find you?
You can find me on Twitter sometimes. I've been trying to take more breaks recently.
Good for
but
you.
You can still find me there at Laura J. Nash.
And listeners, thank you so much for joining us on this episode of The Short Game.